Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, on January 2nd, NFL star Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field. This collapse led several health professionals to believe he showed signs of Commotio-Cordis. Our cardiologist from Montefiore Einstein Center for Heart Vascular Care joins us later to tell us more. What is Commotio-Cordis? Then, with the start of the new year, many people try to challenge themselves to improve their wellness, but can sometimes get stuck on how to start or stay committed. A registered dietitian and nutritionist from Nao Medical sits with us later to share 10 tips on how to improve your wellness. What was the inspiration behind creating this list of tips? After that, the FDA finalizes a rule expanding the availability of abortion pills to certified pharmacies for people with a prescription. A Darney-Landy Fellow of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists sits with us to explain this potential ruling. Will abortion pills soon be available in chain pharmacies? And finally, organization Great Performances and Veganuary are teaming up to encourage more New Yorkers to try out a vegan lifestyle this month. A Bronx-based dish will be the star of this initiative and will be available across the 5 boroughs throughout January. Culinary Ambassador for Great Performances joins me later to tell us more. What is the benefit of veganism? So stay tuned. All this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne. Today is Tuesday, January 17th, and you are now watching Open, a live program bringing you the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Earlier this month, NFL star Damar Hamlin suddenly collapsed on the field mid-game, which caused some health professionals to suspect what he experienced could have potentially been caused by the rare heart condition known as Commotio-Cordis. Cardiologist for Montefiore Einstein Center for Heart Vascular Care, Dr. Andrew Krumerman, joined me to discuss Commotio-Cordis. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, as I mentioned, I think this is a rare heart condition. It's definitely my first time, hearing about it. Can you just explain, what Commotio-Cordis is and how it affects your health?
Sure. So Commotio-Cordis is Latin for agitation of the heart. And it's literally an agitation of one's heart. And it's a very rare condition that is caused by trauma at a very particular time in the cardiac cycle, such that typically an object, typically a ball, needs to hit the area of the chest just over the heart at a specific time that is about 30 to 40 milliseconds of the cardiac cycle. So if a average heart rate is 60, it's beating once per second. Within 30 milliseconds, within that second, you have to hit the heart just at the right place at just the right time. And if you're unlucky, you will develop cardiac arrest because this forceful blow can cause something called ventricular fibrillation. And based on what's been reported and based on the events that occurred on the field that everybody was able to see during the game, appears to what has happened to Damar Hamlin.
Now, would you say, because you mentioned, the timing and stuff like that, would you say that's why it's considered a rare heart condition?
Yes. I mean, if we think about the number of NFL players and the number of NFL games and how rough this sport is and the number of hits that occur in a given game, we rarely see these instances. And although Commotio-Cordis is a known entity and it's been reported throughout the history of sports, it's rare, and you have to really be in the wrong place in the wrong time with a particular set of circumstances.
Despite it being somewhat rare or very rare, what are the risk factors associated with this health condition?
So there really are no risk factors. The risk factors are putting yourself into a contact situation Typically, Commotio-Cordis has been described in sports that involve balls or pucks, such as baseball, hockey, lacrosse. And the ball needs to be hard. It needs to come at a certain velocity. And again, it needs to hit the chest just to the left side of the sternum, to the left side of the breastplate. And it has to hit the chest at just the right time in the cardiac cycle for all these uh, for all this to come together. And so individuals themselves are not particularly at risk for developing commotio-cordis. It's rather their activities that put them at risk and how they behave during those activities.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I wanted to know, is this something that can potentially, now that we know this, is this something that could happen to anybody? Or are there particular people who I guess are more at risk?
So no, this can happen to anybody. This does not happen to people who have a heart condition or a particular predisposition to commotio-cordis. That's not well described, and it's not known to be something that happens to only certain individuals with certain conditions. This can really happen to anybody.
Wow. So I think that's pretty alarming for a lot of people, even though it is rare. So I definitely want to keep mentioning that because I don't want anybody to watch this and be afraid or anything. So it definitely is rare. But now that you say that, are there any symptoms or of anything that people should maybe look out for? How does someone know that they're currently experiencing this?
So if you saw the video or you saw or you watched the game, you can see that this all happens suddenly. Commotio-cordis can result in a condition called sudden cardiac death. So you don't really have symptoms. He was hit in the chest. He stood up, and within a couple of seconds, he fell backwards and passed out. And so you really don't have premonitory symptoms. It's not the kind of thing where you're starting to develop chest pain or you're having shortness of breath or you're feeling dizzy for hours before an event like this occurs. It's really something that happens all at once.
Wow. So how is this similar or different to cardiac arrest?
So this is cardiac arrest. It's something that's causing cardiac arrest. But the majority of cardiac arrests that we see on the playing field are caused by a condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy or ion channelopathies, which are electrical disorders of the heart, which are more congenital based disorders. And those disorders are a little bit different in that patients may have some symptoms ahead of time, or they may have some family history of individuals dying at young ages and having cardiac arrest. Um, but this, in and of itself, is a cardiac arrest. Hard to predict. You can't really see it coming, and that's what's so scary about it.
And can you briefly explain for those who may not be aware, just what cardiac arrest is and, how that affects your health?
Or a cardiac arrest is effectively when the heart beats so rapidly that it doesn't even beat at all. So we consider cardiac arrest to be something when we're looking at heart rhythms called ventricular fibrillation or ventricular tachycardia. Uh, this is usually reversed by taking out something called an external defibrillator and shocking the heart to bring it back to its normal rhythm. And people may be familiar with medical programs and medical dramas on television where doctors and nurses take out the paddles and rub them together and yell clear and shock the patient. Usually they're treating those patients for cardiac arrest.
Now, is trauma to the chest the only way to experience commotio cordis?
Yes.
Okay, so now that we know that, as you mentioned previously, this condition is commonly associated with people in sports. Is there a way people in this field can protect themselves from something like this happening?
Sure. There's not a lot of data to support the use of one particular mechanism of protection, but really the best protection is avoidance. So, for example, if you're playing baseball and you're the batter and a pitch comes in, batters are taught to turn their back to the ball rather than to let the ball hit them in the chest. Similarly, if you're playing other sports where you might use your chest to block a ball coming at you, it's not a good idea. Um, There are pads that are sold that people can wear to help protect the left side and the center of the chest to reduce the effect of trauma. There's even safety balls in baseball, which are sometimes used for younger children's leagues to prevent blunt force trauma to the chest.
Now, I'd really like to know, after this happens to someone, is there any sort of treatment that they must go through, after they experience something like this?
Um, Effectively, other than the resuscitation efforts that one must go through in order to have their lives saved, the rest becomes supportive. So, really, the mainstay of therapy for cardiac arrest, and especially in the setting of Commotio-Cordis, is CPR and rapid defibrillation. So, the fact that Damar Hamlin survived this horrible event is a testament to the rapid recognition of the problem and the rapid action of the crews on the field that came in and immediately administered CPR and defibrillation. This is really the mainstay of treatment. The rest becomes supportive care. The longer somebody is unconscious and suffering from cardiac arrest, the longer their organs don't get vital oxygen and can be damaged.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that he survived, this experience. Is this something that often leads to death?
Well, yes, cardiac arrest can certainly lead to death, and approximately 50% of cases that have been reported of Commotio-Cordis do not survive.
Wow, wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, how can people stay educated about Commotio-Cordis?
So there are some guidelines that are published by the American Heart Association that really talk about both how players that are involved in sports should avoid the situations, and also how systems should set up their coaching and their teams to allow for rapid recognition, CPR training, automatic external defibrillator use, and training of AEDs, training of coaches and players to use AEDs in such situations. So that's the best way, is to really look towards the American Heart Association guidelines.
All right, doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
To stay updated with the Montefiore Einstein Center for Heart Vascular Care, please go to their website at www.montefiore.org/heart or follow them on Twitter at Montefiore Heart. Don't go away, we'll be right back with more Open right after this.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
Kids!
I don't want to talk about it.
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 Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency.
Kids, you all right?
This family's prepared. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan. Go to nyc.gov/readyny or call 311 for more information.
Welcome back. For most people, a new year means new habits. Across the country, people aim to begin their journey towards a healthier lifestyle. In Nutrition for Nao Medical, Melissa Darlow joined me to discuss the top 10 wellness ways and different ways to stay healthier this new year. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, can you first just talk about your organization, Nao Medical?
Absolutely. So Nao Medical, formerly known as StatCare, was created by Dr. Preeti Jain. She began her career as an ER doctor. In this setting, she truly saw the gap between urgent care and primary care, especially in communities that didn't have access to affordable primary care. From this experience, she really went on and made it her mission to bring healthcare services to these underserved communities. We now have over 15 locations. We offer a variety of services, including immigration health, occupational health, mental health, urgent care, and of course, nutrition health related services.
Now, I really want to talk about, the wellness tips, because I think that's just so important for so many people, as I mentioned, as we begin the new year. What inspired you to create, this list of wellness tips?
So we all know, the new year rolls around. New year, new us, right? Everybody sets out with these ambitions to, this is my year. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to run a marathon. So rather than setting out with these, major goals, let's start small. I figured if we have a list, we can pull from that can set us up for success. Can we add a walk around the block twice a week? Can we add extra fruit at breakfast? So starting small and really adding to what we're already doing, it takes the pressure off and it can help set us up for success.
Now, I noticed a lot of the, spots on the list kind of focus on food, which obviously is a huge, it's a huge step in becoming healthier. What are some of the most important tips in regards to swapping out foods or just introducing healthier foods?
So I always like to tell people, don't be afraid to try new things and stick with me here. So let's say you're a big fan of chicken salad or egg salad, and we know mayonnaise can be a part of that. What if we swapped mayo for Greek yogurt? And I say this because, number one, you're not gonna taste the difference, I promise. Number two, you're gonna add extra calcium. You're gonna add probiotics. It's gonna be lower in calories. It's gonna have vitamin D. So by making these swaps, which, if you don't like one of them, you can always go through and try more, but you're gonna be adding these beneficial nutrients to your diet.
Now, I think it's so funny that you mentioned chicken salad, and I think a lot of people get tricked with this because I'm like, oh, chicken salad's healthy. What do you mean? And then it's like, oh yeah, there's mayonnaise. That's not a healthy thing. So, what advice do you have for people who can sometimes get tricked by these things that we automatically think are healthy because it's called a salad or, it's just a little bit misleading in regard to health?
Great question. So as we all know, walking through the grocery store, we can see products that say promote heart health or, promotes gut health. So I always like to encourage people, turn it around, check the label. What's really going into these superfoods or superfood ingredients at the store, and just getting a better understanding of what it is you're having for breakfast or lunch or sending your kids off to school with.
Now, I understand there's something called plate method. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the plate method is, imagine you have your plate, split it in half. Fill half of the plate with something colorful. Maybe it's a vegetable, maybe it's some fruit. Just add some color to your plate. That way we're immediately getting fiber. Split the other plate in half. On that half of the plate, put 1/4 as the protein. So think chicken, fish, eggs. The other 1/4 as your carbohydrate. So rice, potatoes, pasta. And when we do that, we're hitting all of our food groups. We're getting all of the proper nutrition in that meal. And most importantly, it's gonna keep our blood sugar stable, which keeps us full, keeps us energized, and that's what we want.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned color, because I also think it kind of makes things a little bit easier when you can just visually look at your plate and say, okay, I need some more color on this plate. So I really love that tip. Now, I really want to talk about becoming active because that is also, another goal that so many people have, and that's just to become active. What are some ways people who still work from home or maybe have a hybrid schedule can be a little bit more active?
Mm-hmm. Get up. If you find yourself sitting and 4 or 5 hours have passed, go for a quick walk in between a call. If you're in an apartment complex, run up and down the stairs. Your neighbors might think you're crazy, but getting your heart rate up, it breaks up the day, keeps us energized. And put on some music, maybe dance around your room, just getting that blood flowing and, again, making it work for you. So rather than saying, I have to run for an hour after work,
right,
can we just walk for 10 minutes in between a call? That stuff really adds up.
Right. Or feeling the pressure to like go to a gym. It's like you can possibly just do this in your own home. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Now, why do you think people often struggle to stick to these new habits? Because they sound great and we're really motivated when it all, when it's in the beginning, but then let's say maybe a month or two later, it's hard to keep it up. So why do you think people struggle with that?
Mm-hmm. Two things that come to mind. Number one, we try to do too much at once. And number two, we have really wild, pressures that we put on ourselves. So rather, like we mentioned earlier, than saying, I have to go to the gym every single day, can we add those walks before work 2 or 3 times a week? It helps to remove the pressure and it's more realistic. Who really has time to set aside an hour for the gym every day? But we can all say, all right, let's walk the kids to school. Let's walk to grab a coffee. So just adding that and making it realistic for your routine. And like I mentioned earlier, removing the pressure. Think of these things they're adding to our health. This is all great stuff. So really keeping in mind that you're taking the time to really make improvements for your health, your life, your energy. Anything you do, that's a win.
Now, I really want to talk about access to healthy food or just being active because we talk about that a lot when, we're trying to change our habits. But I think it's just also really important to fully understand the benefits of nutrition. So that could be, as you mentioned, going to the supermarket and reading a label and understanding, what you're reading, or, just anything. What is the benefit of truly understanding nutrition?
Nutrition knowledge is critical. And I'll give you an example. Speaking with a patient who recently found out she had prediabetes. And she says, Melissa, I don't eat dessert. I'm not a candy person. This makes no sense to me. So deeper in the conversation, what are you hydrating with throughout the day? A couple sodas. Oh, how many? 5. 1 Coca-Cola has 40 grams of sugar. So just to do a little math here, 5 sodas in a day, that's going to hit 200 grams of sugar, which is the equivalent to 5 Hershey's bars.
Wow.
So just by knowing that information, knowledge is power. We can make more informed decisions, not only in that direct moment, but for a lifetime.
Now, can you also talk about just ways you can cut down on sugar just by changing what you drink? Because I think for me, I know like drinking so many of your calories or sugar is like, it's not worth it. So what are some tips that you have for people who may struggle with that?
Rather than saying we are completely removing soda from your diet, let's just start by cutting back on 1 a day. So if you're drinking 3, let's go to 2. And also, what are we going to replace it with? So if people know, oh, I love my afternoon Sprite, I need to have it, let's create something new we're going to look forward to. What about an iced tea? Or, adding lemon or mint to your water. So there are still ways to add flavor to promote hydration, but really, again, starting small.
Now, I think this is really interesting. You mentioned that the use of technology before bed could also affect your wellness and your health. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Definitely. So there are tons of research studies out there showing that increased screen time before bed is going to decrease the hormone melatonin, which promotes sleep. So if we're not getting that melatonin going and we're not feeling, ready for bed and the endless scrolling and our mind can wander, we're therefore going to bed later, waking up in a fog, which can unfortunately, set ourselves up for less productivity, less informed decisions. If we're tired, we're fatigued. So again, we don't have to completely remove cell phones from the bedroom, but what if we say, all right, for 30 minutes before I go to bed, maybe I'll read a book, maybe I'll journal, just starting there.
Now, I really want to get your opinion now that we're on the topic of technology. As a nutritionist, how do you feel about people getting tips from just other people on, let's say, Instagram or TikTok, and they're sharing their experience? What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely, we all know, social media can be the wild west of information. Everybody, especially around food, everybody eats, so we all can become experts since we are eating. Mm-hmm. I would just encourage people to check your sources. So anyone can go online and spread information, but get curious. What background does this person have to be sharing this level of information? So do your due diligence before following, blind information.
Now, I really want to talk about your organization and the locations that you have in the Bronx. You will soon open another, which I think is pretty cool. Why is this important for people in the Bronx? And can you tell us a little bit about those locations?
Absolutely. So we currently have 2 locations in the Bronx, one in Bartow Mall and then the other on East 174th Street. Our third is coming very soon to Hunts Point. And Nao actually means boat in Hindi and Spanish. And the idea behind the name is that we would serve as a ferry to bring patients perhaps from a time of stress or uncertainty to better health. So by bringing affordable, accessible healthcare to all communities is really the mission of Nao Medical.
All right, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us and really teaching us how to be a little bit healthier this year.
Thanks for having me.
To learn more about Nao Medical, please go to their website at www.naomedical.com or follow them across all platforms at Nao Medical. Stay tuned, we have more open right after this.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
The way my mind works, I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
analytics and empathy. That's how I get clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I'm more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. Stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
You can now watch MNN, Brick TV, QPTV, and SIC TV on BronxNet. Tune into BX Omni, Channel 67 Optimum, 2133 Files during most Sunday evenings. We'll show you some amazing content from our friends at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Brick TV in Brooklyn, Queens Public Television, and Staten Island Community Television. Every borough represented in the Boogie Down. Epic partnerships for the ages. And catch our new Next channel, produced in partnership with MNN, 24/7 on BronxNet Channel 952 Optimum and 2138 Fios.
Welcome back. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration now allows certified pharmacies to dispense abortion medication to people who have a prescription. The change could expand access at both brick and mortar stores and online pharmacies, making this a huge step in the journey toward access to reproductive health. Dr. Kristyn Brandi, a Darney-Landy Fellow from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, joined me to discuss this. Dr. Brandi, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I want to jump right into it. Can you just talk about, what could have sparked the FDA to make these changes to abortion access?
Well, I'm really glad that the FDA has made this change in the way that they regulate mifepristone. It's something that has a long history of evidence that shows that this medication is safe, it's effective, and that the restrictions that it had around mifepristone, how it was dispensed, who could dispense it, didn't actually improve any safety. This announcement was actually announced in December of 2021, but it's now coming into effect. And I'm really excited to see what it does to improve access to patients.
Now, also want to make sure that everybody understands this because when we hear pharmacies, people often do think of maybe, a chain pharmacy like Walgreens. Does this mean abortion pills will now be available in pharmacies like that?
Yeah, it does. Although it's unclear exactly which pharmacies will choose to hold this medication, essentially each pharmacy will have to go through a process to get approved from the FDA. And Walgreens and CVS has already announced that they are going to be going through the process to get that approval so they can dispense this medication. But other chains like Walmart and others have not yet announced what they're going to do. And so while it's going to be available much more readily to a lot of pharmacies in your community, it's unclear exactly if it'll be every pharmacy or certain pharmacies.
Now, will the distribution and sale of these products be similar to Plan B?
Not exactly. And I do want to note for people that are watching that there is a difference between Plan B and mifepristone or medication abortion. I get that question all of the time. And just so that's clear, Plan B is emergency contraception. It's something that prevents you from getting pregnant, versus mifepristone or the abortion pill actually ends a pregnancy if you are pregnant. And so Plan B won't impact a pregnancy if you're already pregnant. It's important to also understand the difference now in these two medications because Plan B is over the counter. You can get it at any pharmacy. It's something you don't need a prescription for. But mifepristone still requires you to get a prescription from your doctor, from your clinician. And so it's important for people to know that you can't just walk into a pharmacy right now and be able to buy this medication. You still have to be evaluated by a clinician and get a prescription.
Now, thank you so much for clarifying that because I definitely don't want people to think that they can, as you mentioned, Plan B is over the counter. So it's definitely clear to make that distinction that this is not something that's over the counter. You still need to go to your doctor. Am I correct?
Right. And so the evaluation part hasn't changed. People still need to go see a clinician, and that can be either in person or it could be through telemedicine. But you need an evaluation to make sure this medication is safe for you, that it's appropriate for depending on how far along you are in pregnancy, and to go over risk and benefits, just like you would for any other real medication.
Now, what was the process of obtaining abortion pills like before, we've heard about this change?
So the process was very similar at the beginning part of it, meaning that you still have to go see a clinician. Again, either going to a clinic, going to a hospital, or using telemedicine as a way to talk to a clinician. They would go over your history, go over your risk factors, and talk with you about the pros and cons about whether or not medication abortion was the right choice for you. The difference was, in order to get the pill before, you had to go either in person to this clinic, and actually in the past, you had to have a clinician actually watch you take the medication in person.
Wow.
Or you had to wait for a particular pharmacy or that clinic to mail you from their own stock their medication. And so that could take a couple of days, potentially weeks, to get it mailed to you. The change now is that you can get it just like any other medication your doctor can prescribe you. You can get it prescribed to your local pharmacy and pick it up whenever you're ready.
Wow. So I can already see how much that's going to benefit so many people. Now, I understand that this change would allow, as we mentioned, local pharmacies to stock these pills once they go through a certification process. Can you talk about that process and why it's necessary?
Sure. So the process is actually similar to the process that doctors have to go through to be able to prescribe this medication. The FDA has created certain rules where you have to be able to describe how you will hold the medication, how you'll store it. Do you know which patients are able to get this medication or not? Often there's a screening process on the clinician side to make sure that you can identify how far someone is based on their pregnancy, and also if the pregnancy is inside the uterus or an ectopic pregnancy outside the uterus, which this is not a safe medication for that purpose. And so, unfortunately, this is potentially an onerous process. It can take a couple of weeks, potentially a couple of months to go through this screening process. And actually, they've shown that there's good data that this doesn't actually improve the safety of the medicine. The medicine's already incredibly safe. But unfortunately, due to abortion stigma, there's been a lot of red tape around being able to access this medication. And I'm really excited now that people will have a little bit easier access to it.
Now, Americans saw the overturning of Roe v. Wade last year. How will that affect how these pills are distributed across the country?
That's a great question. And I know a lot of people that may be in other states where abortion is restricted. may be thinking that now they may have access to this medication. And unfortunately, that may not be the case. In places where abortion is not banned, this will help improve access by people being able to pick it up at their local pharmacy. But in states that have rules that ban abortion or ban the use of telemedicine for abortion, this unfortunately won't change their access, that they won't be able to get this medication in the same way. So it is helpful for a lot of people, but there are still a lot of people left behind, and there's a lot of work we need to do to make sure that there are rules in place so that those patients can also access the care they need.
Now, can you talk a little bit or expand on some of the work that you think needs to be done to help those who may still not have access? Because I think that, just as we saw what happened last year, it's so important to not get used to, how things are. So, what work do you think needs to be done?
Absolutely. And there are a couple things that we can do. It should be noted that there are some states that even though the FDA has overturned these rules and how it regulates this medicine, there are states that have passed laws saying that you still have to come in person. You still have to get it at this clinic versus getting it prescribed to you. And so we need to work within those states to overturn those rules so that patients can access telemedicine just like they can anywhere else. I don't want my patients and for patients across the country for their care to depend on their zip code. And so thinking about ways we can help making sure that states have access, potentially even having a federal law that allows people to access medication abortion through telemedicine now that we have the ability to prescribe it, I think that would be a great next step. So there's still a little bit of work to do.
Now, prior to this change, the FDA limited this type of distribution of abortion pills due to safety concerns. Now, I just want to talk about, what was the FDA concerned about?
Sure. On face value, the FDA expressed concerns about whether or not providers could identify how far along someone was in pregnancy and whether or not this was an ectopic pregnancy, a pregnancy outside the uterus. However, there's tons of data out there that suggests that these additional steps and the red tape that they created around this medication doesn't actually improve the safety of medication and how patients and doctors use it. And in fact, this exact same medication was able to be prescribed for other types of conditions, not abortion. And so it suggests that really abortion stigma was the core reason why all of this red tape existed. And I'm glad that we're starting to peel away some of that.
Now, your organization announced that this was an important step forward. Could you just expand, on what this means for so many people who now have access or who now have this access?
Sure. Yes, I'm part of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or ACOG, which is a group that supports doctors across the country, many of whom were unable to provide this care because they couldn't stock this medication in their own clinic. And so now that they're able to go through this process and be able to prescribe it, a lot more doctors will be able to provide this care to patients, and meaning more patients are going to be able to access this care that they need. I think particularly we need to name the fact that a lot of these restrictions that are now overturned will allow people that otherwise didn't have access to this care. People that couldn't take off work to get to a clinic, who during the time of COVID may be worried about seeing and interfacing with people in person. And so I think that this is going to be able to make care more equitable and more accessible to a lot of folks.
Now, I also want to touch on the fact that, as we mentioned, is mifepristone. Is that the only pill that will be available in pharmacies?
So mifepristone is one of two medications that you get when you're undergoing a medication abortion. And so all of the talk that we're talking about today is related to this pill, the mifepristone pill. Misoprostol, which is the other medication used in abortion, has already been available in pharmacies for a long time. Although it is used off-label for abortion care, it's also used off-label for most of the uses that that misoprostol is accepted and medically used for. So now we'll be able to have both medications be able to be prescribed, which is the evidence-based standard of care way for people to access medication abortion.
Now, can you just quickly let us know, what are some services your organization provides in regard to reproductive health?
Sure. So ACOG is a member organization. It serves about 65,000 OBGYNs across the country. Things that we do are provide up-to-date clinical guidance for physicians to be able to know what is the standard of care in OBGYN practice. We also provide resources to patients. So if you're looking for evidence-based information, you're not sure exactly where to turn, you can always go to the ACOG website and get information. And we are trying to improve care across the country by advocating that care should be evidence-based, it should be patient-centered, and really helping to improve access for the people that need it.
All right, doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
To stay connected with the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, please go to their website at www.acog.org. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Open right after this.
I'll see ya.
After a basketball game, a black teenage boy, Brandon, reads his texts in his family group chat. Auntie Flo, congrats on the big win. Mom, that's my baby. Brandon replies, thanks, y'all. In a park, his sister Maya texts, where are we celebrating? Dad replies, home. Mom texts, I got dinner going. Auntie Flo replies, ooh, I can't wait. Then receives a FEMA flood watch text alert. She texts the family, anyone see that weather alert? We need a plan to stay safe, especially after last year. Ready has a list of resources at ready.gov/plan. In his workshop, Dad sends a photo of emergency supplies and texts, looks like we need flashlights and batteries. Leaving a store with a shopping bag, Brandon replies, I got us covered. Mom texts, I'll check in with Grandma and Papa. Maya texts, thanks, Auntie. Feeling good about this plan.
Got some batteries?
Auntie Flo replies, love y'all. We gotta stay safe. Later, the family.
Feel like he gets on every time I see you.
Stay connected. Time for that.
Man, it's lonely. Like, going through life lonely.
There is the therapeutic aspect of music, just expressing how you feel. I'm going to talk to Howie about his feelings, making it into a song.
COVID-19 has changed how we spend weekends with the girls. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to brunching instead of late-night munching. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts. As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it? Is it safe? Should I wait?
It's okay to have questions. Now get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, love you always.
Everything I do.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
Welcome back. Organization Great Performances is teaming up with Veganary to encourage more New Yorkers to try out a vegan lifestyle. The global initiative aims to encourage people to try veganism to help protect the planet and improve their health. Joining me to discuss the initiative is the Culinary Ambassador for Great Performances, Georgette Farkas. Georgette, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kibin. Welcome to Mae Mae Cafe here in the Bronx.
Okay, thank you so much for introducing me. I love the background, so thank you so much for that. Now, I want to jump right into it. Can you tell us a little bit more about Great Performances and their mission?
Yes, of course. Well, I would say the core of our mission is making people happy with delicious food. And we do that in a whole bunch of ways. We are known probably best of all as caterers. We cater big galas and events and weddings. If you're a New Yorker, you've probably been to a Great Performances catered event at some time. But we also manage lots of cafes and restaurants all over the city, almost always attached to the cultural life of New York City, important cultural institutions. So we are at Wave Hill up in the Bronx. We are at Trinity Cafe downtown at the tip of Manhattan. We are at Dizzy's at Jazz at Lincoln Center. So Great Performances is a caterer, but also a hospitality company about taking care of people with really good food.
Now, what is Veganary? And I hope I'm saying that correct, but can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative and that organization?
A good question. I always like to say it doesn't matter how you say it as long as you try it, right? So I say Veganuary. Veganuary is a movement. It's international, it is national, but for us, it's local. For us, it's right here in the South Bronx. So it is a movement that encourages people to think about, to sample, to try a vegan lifestyle. To have an entirely plant-based plant-based eating, plant-based cooking. So Veganuary is about considering your health and the health of the planet by embracing a plant-based menu.
Now, Mae Mae Cafe, the Latin-inspired vegan eatery in the Bronx, will be the source of a dish that will introduce the vegan initiative from Veganuary. How did the Mae Mae Cafe become part of this initiative?
Mae Mae Cafe is sort of in the heart and soul of great performances. As I mentioned, we have cafes and restaurants and catering all over the city, but our roots, our home base is right here in the South Bronx. And we had this beautiful space in the ground floor of our building where we could create a cafe where we really take care of people one at a time. And we made this cafe Latin, vegan with a Latin influence. So that is what Mae Mae Cafe is. It's about our reaching out to and welcoming our Bronx community with food that is delicious and healthy and happens to be entirely vegan. Because if you don't have the delicious and healthy together, no good. But delicious and healthy on one plate, really great.
Now, why is it important for people in the Bronx to know that these types of restaurants actually do exist in our borough?
Right, good question. I think there's lots of great food all around the Bronx, but compared to other places, there may be not as many really healthy plant-based offerings in the Bronx as there are in other places. So this is our way for great performances with our own little cafe to offer our South Bronx community, again, that food that is vegan, which makes it as healthy as it is delicious. So we can help spread the word. We may not try to convert you, but we can just make you think about how great healthy food is. So you'll want it for the deliciousness, and you may continue to eat it because you know it's also good for you.
Now, we actually do have a dish of yours from Mae Mae Cafe in the studio right here with us. And before I take a bite, because I'm really excited to try this, can you actually tell us more about the creation of this dish?
Sure. Well, the thing about the mushroom mole tacos is, tell me who doesn't love tacos, who doesn't love mole sauce, and mushrooms. For some people, it may be something new to try. For us, it's a great classic. So it's a way of taking a really traditional and much loved Latin dish and giving you our vegan spin on it. So the heart of this dish is the mushrooms. The mole is something that is so enticing because it combines sweet and savory and spicy notes. So our mushrooms are slow braised in the mole sauce, which makes them tender and delicious. And again, that sweet, spicy kick. And it's also it's hearty and fulfilling. So we take our mole braised mushrooms, we put them in a taco shell. We spread a little fresh, finely chopped white onion on top, some cilantro for that little herbal green note. That's mushroom mole tacos, and I hear you crunching.
I know, it's very crunchy, and it is very tasty. I think that's like you mentioned, the most important thing when it comes to trying out something new, that it has to be delicious. So I think this is amazing. You know, is that something that you really strive for when you are creating a vegan dish for people who are maybe trying it for the first time?
Try something new. So by giving it to you in a taco, that's something you're familiar with and that you love and that you know is good. And you may not even matter to you that this one happens to be vegan, but it means it's also going to be really good for you, really nutritious. But as I said, first thing first, we eat with our eyes. It's beautiful and enticing, fresh, bright, green. It's delicious, it's crunchy, it's sweet, it's filling. So it hits all of those notes and it's good for you. So winning combination.
Now,
right here at Mae Mae.
You also don't have to give away your secrets, but I'm really curious for anybody who wants to know, this really does look just like meat. And I think that's pretty cool. And I don't really taste any difference. You know, can you just explain, maybe what substitute you use to kind of give it that familiar taste?
Right. Well, very good question. So we chose to make these tacos out of mushrooms because mushrooms are, by definition, they are hearty. They have a really fulfilling, nice texture, and they have tons of flavor. Almost what some people call umami, which is just a way of saying that it has very deep, earthy flavor. So mushrooms have this deep, earthy flavor, this nice, slightly chewy texture. So I think that whatever you're using as a vegan main ingredient, it just has to really have that texture, that flavor, even the color. So I don't know if it's a trick, but we just start with a great ingredient. We weren't even trying to replace the meat. It's more that we're just trying to serve something delicious. Because I think if you, and of course a lot of vegan recipes do replace meat with something. But I think it's more important to start with a delicious, fulfilling, hearty ingredient, enhance its flavor with your seasoning here in the mushroom mole that has that sweet, spicy cocoa chiles. So if you have the texture and the flavor, you're there. That's the secret. Good ingredients, great recipes.
Now, for those of you who watched and saw me take a bite, you can actually also take a bite of this dish. Now, I know it will be available, well, it was available from January 1st, and it's going all the way until January 31st. Can you tell us some of the locations this dish will be featured in?
Of course. Well, it's here at Mae Mae all January, but it's actually one of our signature dishes. So you can have it all year here at Mae Mae. But we're taking it to share Veganuary with people. We're taking it from the northern end of the Bronx up at our cafe at Wave Hill. If you haven't been, you must go walking at Wave Hill and then stop for lunch at the cafe, all the way down to the southern tip of Manhattan at Trinity Church, where there's Trinity Cafe, and then right in the middle, the cafe at Woolman Skating Rink there in Central Park, and even in our restaurant at Jazz at Lincoln Center, Dizzy's at Jazz at Lincoln Center. So we've got you covered from north to south and right in the middle. That's
Now,
great performances.
What are the benefits of veganism?
Veganism. I think it is about the health of the planet, because growing vegetables is simply better for the planet than what it takes to raise meat. So it's the health of the planet, and it's also your health, your personal health and well-being. It is heart healthy. So these are the benefits of Veganuary. It's one of those things that's good 360 degrees for the environment, for the climate, for the planet, and good for your own personal health, especially your heart health.
Now, I understand that a lot of the times when people use the term, going vegan or veganism, people often say plant-based. Can you explain or expand on what it means to have a plant-based diet?
Absolutely. So that means that everything you eat, all of the ingredients are somehow plant-based. So we can actually break that down right here in these wonderful mushroom mole tacos. A mushroom is a plant. The taco shell, this one happens to be corn, obviously plant-based. The mole sauce is made with chili peppers and herbs and spices and cocoa, sesame. All of those things come from plants. We garnish it with these lovely crunchy radishes and the nice bright fresh green cilantro herbs. So the point is that there is nothing here that comes from an animal. And more importantly, every ingredient in this dish or in vegan cooking in general comes from a plant.
Now, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think it was very clever, just to use tacos and, to use food that people already love. It also could be a little bit intimidating. So, what inspired you to introduce the idea of veganism with food that people already love?
Well, I would say that Great Performances has always had this very plant-based inspiration from its very get-go. It's a company that's been around for 40 years. The owner of the company completely embraces plant-based living, so much so that she made her cafe a plant shop. You can see the plants and a vegan menu. So we embrace veganism. We're not trying to convert you. We're just trying to make you think about your health, the health of the planet, offer you these healthy options. So you may choose other food that we make, but we hope you will try the vegan food that we make. So it's part of our responsibility, part of being a responsible member of our community, whether it's here in the Bronx or wherever we cater all over the city. It's our caring for the health of our community.
Now, I also want to mention that I think it's really important that your organization is, Mae Mae's in the Bronx, because I think a lot of people feel that this can be unsustainable, or, maybe if they're from a low income background, they feel that they can't afford to eat this way. What are your thoughts on that? And have you found that to be true?
I think that it's a misconception about plant-based eating, that you need some fancy exotic vegetables or something. No, actually, I think that in general, vegetables are actually per pound and per nutrient less expensive than meat. So you might find that this is healthy, not just for your body, but also for your budget. So some of those misconceptions, now having access to great fresh vegetables, that sometimes takes an effort. You actually have to go to the market, go to the grocery store, but they're out there. And it's true that in our community here in the Bronx, we would like to make good fresh vegetables more accessible. But I think if you look closely at it, you'll find that it's actually just as healthy for your wallet as it is for your for your body. Again, if we come back to this simple, delicious dish, taco shells or something that you may have at home or you probably make for your family already. Mushrooms, not an expensive ingredient. The mole sauce, so no, as healthy for your budget as it is for your body.
And if somebody is struggling with this, or maybe they believe these misconceptions, what are some ways they can work around this if they are interested in having a plant-based diet?
I think that's a great point, that they don't necessarily have to think about going 100%. You can just try a few little things at a time. When you're thinking about dinner, just think about how that main ingredient, it's kind of changing your thinking. Maybe the main ingredient is going to be vegetables. Maybe I'm going to make a cauliflower steak instead of a steak. It's going to be a lot less expensive. It's going to feel so good for you. It's going to be great for your digestion, great for your heart health. So take small steps and just think about, this is really, part of this is just thinking about what you're eating, where your food is coming from, and just about any dish that you may love to have, we can probably find something for you that is just as delicious and enticing and satisfying. A burger made with lentils and beans and mushrooms, delicious. You might not even miss the red meat.
Now, I also want to add that, in addition to that, for a very long time, access to plant-based meals were associated with certain demographics, whether that were, people who maybe lived in Manhattan or, people who had more money. In addition to Veganuary, what are some other methods your organization uses to educate people and to encourage people that, being a part of the vegan community is somewhere that they're welcomed?
Right. So as I said, yes, most welcome. I think you can take it on just one bite at a time, one dish at a time, even one ingredient at a time. The next time you're in the supermarket, start in the vegetable aisle. You might try something new. Come and visit our website where you will find so many plant-based recipes. Pick up a plant-based cookbook, or even in your favorite cookbook, just go to the vegetable section. Have a look at the Veganuary website as well. So I think if we take a staple that is something so delicious and satisfying like rice and beans, what is healthier than that? What is more delicious than that? And what is more accessible than that? So these options are all around you. Yes, they've been associated with perhaps a more expensive lifestyle, but again, take that example of rice and beans, healthy, affordable, accessible, delicious, and satisfying.
All right, Georgette, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for, having Mae Mae Cafe bring these tacos. They were really delicious.
Well, I can't wait to serve them to you all in person here at Mae Mae. Let me know when you're coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kibin.
To keep in touch with Great Performances, please go to their website at www.greatperformances.com. And to stay up to date with Mae Mae Cafe, please go to their website at www.maemaecafe.com. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.